when a television host known for his direct approach met with a controversial royal figure. What should have been a standard celebrity interview turned into one of the most dramatic moments in recent talk show history. In just a few seconds, a simple comment would start a chain of events that ended with the guest being asked to leave the stage. This is the story of how Greg Gutfeld's interview with Meghan Markle went completely wrong in front of millions of viewers. The interview started like any other celebrity appearance. Gutfeld, famous for his quick wit and straightforward style, had agreed to host the former royal family member. Her publicity team had promised it would be a friendly conversation about her charity work. The studio was filled with eager audience members, the cameras were ready, and people across America were watching at home. But something seemed off from the very beginning. When Meghan walked onto the set, her usual bright smile looked forced and unnatural. Her body language seemed stiff and uncomfortable. Gutfeld, always the professional, welcomed her with his typical humor. He made a joke about how she was someone who needed no introduction, though she usually gave herself one anyway. The audience laughed and clapped as Meghan sat down in the guest chair across from him. She adjusted her expensive designer clothes carefully before responding. Meghan thanked him for having her on the show, but then added that his introduction was rather presumptuous. The audience's latter became nervous and uncertain. This wasn't the warm, friendly response they had expected from a guest. Gutfeld raised his eyebrow but stayed calm. He asked what was presumptuous about it, saying he thought it was actually pretty tame compared to some of the introductions she had written for herself in the past. He tried to keep the mood light and playful, but Meghan didn't see it that way. Her voice had a sharp edge when she asked what he was implying. The friendly atmosphere in the studio started to shift. Gutfeld leaned back in his chair, sensing that the energy was changing. He explained that he wasn't implying anything negative. He was simply saying that she had never been shy about promoting herself, and he actually found that refreshing in Hollywood. It was meant as a compliment, or at least a neutral observation. Instead of laughing along or playing into the banter, Meghan's expression became hard and serious. She said she thought he had her confused with someone else. She insisted that everything she did was for charity and making the world a better place. Not everyone could understand that level of commitment, she added. The studio became very quiet. Even the camera operators looked at each other with concern. Gutfeld's smile disappeared as he realized this interview wasn't going to be the fun conversation he had planned. He tried to get things back on track by suggesting they talk about her latest project. He mentioned that she had been working with several organizations recently. But Meghan corrected him sharply. She said she didn't work with organizations. Organizations worked with her. There was a difference, she explained, when you brought the kind of global platform and influence that she brought to these causes. Gutfeld blinked slowly, trying to process what he had just heard. The audience was completely silent now, feeling the tension building between the host and his guest. Gutfeld asked her to tell everyone about these causes that were lucky enough to work with her. His voice had taken on a slightly sharper tone. Meghan sat up straighter in her chair and lifted her chin. She said luck had nothing to do with it. These organizations approached her because they recognized authentic leadership when they saw it, which was quite rare in today's media landscape. As she said this, she looked directly at Gutfeld, making it obvious she was taking a shot at him personally. The host's jaw tightened, but his many years of experience doing live television helped him stay composed. He slowly repeated her phrase about authentic leadership and asked what that looked like exactly. Meghan responded that it looked like someone who didn't need to tear others down to build themselves up. It meant someone who used their platform responsibly instead of just making jokes about serious issues. The studio became so quiet that you could hear the soft humming of the cameras. Gutfeld put down his note cards and looked straight at his guest. He asked if she was seriously lecturing him about using platforms responsibly on his own show. Meghan didn't back down at all. If anything, she seemed to become more confident from his reaction. She said she was simply pointing out that some people took their public roles more seriously than others. Gutfeld shot back that some people earned their public roles instead of marrying into them. The audience gasped out loud. It was the first real punch thrown in what was quickly turning into a verbal fight. But instead of being hurt by the comment, Meghan seemed to enjoy the confrontation. She asked how he dared to diminish her accomplishments and her advocacy work by reducing it all to who she married. She insisted she was successful long before she met Harry. Gutfeld wasn't backing down either. He asked what exactly she had been successful at, mentioning a cable television show that got canceled and a few small movie roles that nobody watched. Meghan fired back that she was building a brand, creating content that mattered, and making a difference in people's lives. But she wouldn't expect someone who made a living mocking others to understand that. The tension in the studio was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Gutfeld's production team was frantically making gestures from the side of the stage, but both the host and guest were locked in verbal combat and not paying attention to anyone else. Gutfeld leaned forward and said if she wanted to talk about making a difference, they should discuss the staff members she allegedly made cry. They should talk about the family relationships she had destroyed. They should mention the taxpayer money spent on her security while she criticized the institution that gave her everything. Meghan's eyes flashed with anger. She said those were lies spread by a racist media that couldn't handle a strong, independent woman of color joining their precious royal family. Gutfeld muttered something under his breath and shook his head. Meghan snapped back that yes, here they were again, because every time someone criticized her, it got dismissed or blamed on her race or her nationality. But the truth was she had accomplished more in her life than most people ever would, and she did it without inheriting a television show or a media empire. That last comment hit Gutfeld where it hurt. His show wasn't inherited. It was earned through years of hard work in smaller markets and proving himself as both a comedian and commentator. His face darkened as he processed the insult. He told Meghan that she was absolutely right about one thing. She was different from other guests he had on the show. She smiled, thinking she had won some kind of victory. She thanked him for finally acknowledging that, but Gutfeld continued, saying she was different because most of his guests had actual accomplishments to talk about, instead of just complaining about how misunderstood they were. The smile vanished from Meghan's face instantly. She asked him to excuse her, shocked at what he said. Gutfeld repeated that he had hosted politicians, authors, comedians, and business leaders. These were people who had actually built something with their lives. All she seemed to have built was a career out of being perpetually offended and upset. Meghan stood up suddenly, her chair scraping loudly against the studio floor. She said she would not sit there and be insulted by someone who clearly had no understanding of the work she did or the challenges she had faced. Gutfeld remained seated, looking up at her with a mixture of contempt and amusement. He questioned what challenges she faced, pointing out that she married into one of the wealthiest families in the world. Meghan said he had no idea what he was talking about. She mentioned the isolation, the attacks, and the lack of support from people who were supposed to protect her. Gutfeld responded flatly that she lived in a palace and people were mean to her on social media. He sarcastically said he would get his tiny violin. The audience was stunned into complete silence. This had gone far beyond typical talk show banter into something much more personal and ugly. Meghan pointed a perfectly manicured finger at Gutfeld. She said he was exactly what was wrong with media today. He thought being cruel was the same as being clever. He thought tearing people down made him some sort of truth teller. Gutfeld replied by asking if she thought being a victim made her interesting. He pointed out that nobody forced her to come on the show. Nobody forced her to marry into the royal family. She made choices, and now she wanted sympathy for the consequences. Meghan said she came on the show to talk about important issues and use her platform for good. Instead, she was being attacked by someone who was clearly intimidated by strong women. Gutfeld laughed out loud at that suggestion. He said he wasn't intimidated by her at all. He had interviewed actual strong women over the years. Women who built companies, who fought wars, who changed laws. She wasn't strong, he said. She was just loud. That comment seemed to break something inside Meghan. Her composed appearance cracked completely. She asked how he dared to question her strength. Her voice rose to a level that made the sound engineers wince. She said he sat behind his desk every night making jokes about people who were actually trying to make a difference in the world. What had he ever done besides mock others, she demanded. Gutfeld's eyes narrowed. He had dealt with difficult guests before, but never one who seemed so determined to insult not just him, but his entire life's work. He asked what he had done. He had entertained millions of people every night for years. He had given them something to laugh about in a world full of people like her telling them how terrible everything was. Meghan scoffed at the word entertainment, throwing her hands up dramatically. She asked if that was his contribution to society, making people laugh while the world burned. Gutfeld shot back that it was better than making people miserable while living in luxury. At least he was honest about what he did. Meghan stepped closer to his desk, her voice dripping with condescension. She asked if he called spreading negativity and cynicism honest. Did he call making fun of people who were trying to help others honest? Gutfeld replied that he called it reality. And the reality was that most of the people she claimed to be helping had never heard of her outside of tabloid headlines. The studio audience was frozen in their seats. Some had their phones out, recording this meltdown in real time. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of what was becoming the most dramatic talk show confrontation in television history. Meghan said that Gutfeld's problem was that he was threatened by people who actually stood for something. He was so used to his little echo chamber of cynicism that when someone with real values showed up, he couldn't handle it. Gutfeld stood up again, matching her aggressive posture. He asked if real values meant abandoning your family. Was that what she called taking millions of dollars from streaming companies to complain about how hard her life was? Meghan snapped that she didn't abandon anyone. She removed herself from a toxic situation that was destroying her mental health. But someone like him could never understand that because he had never had to make a difficult choice in his life. Gutfeld laughed bitterly and asked about difficult choices. He said she had every privilege handed to her on a silver platter and she threw it away because people criticized her. That wasn't a difficult choice, he said. That was a tantrum. Meghan's face was flushed red now. Her carefully applied makeup was starting to show stress lines. She insisted he had absolutely no idea what she went through. The constant scrutiny, the lies in the press, the complete lack of support from the institution she married into. Gutfeld said flatly that this was just public life. Every celebrity, every politician, every public figure dealt with criticism. The difference was most of them didn't burn down their entire family over it. Meghan shouted that she didn't burn anything down, causing several audience members to actually jump in their seats. She said she protected her family. She protected her children from growing up in that environment. Gutfeld fired back that she protected her bank account. She turned family drama into a Netflix special and a best-selling book. Very noble, he said sarcastically. That comment seemed to hit Meghan like a physical blow. Her mouth opened and closed several times as she struggled to find words. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaking with rage. She called him a disgusting human being. She said he sat there judging her when he didn't know the first thing about sacrifice or service or putting others before yourself. Gutfeld repeated the word service incredulously. He pointed out that she served for 2 years and spent most of that time complaining about it. He said he had viewers who had served their communities for decades without asking for a documentary deal. Meghan protested that those people didn't have to give up their entire lives, their careers, their identities. Gutfeld exploded that neither did she. She chose to marry into the royal family. Nobody forced her. She knew what she was signing up for, and when it got difficult, she quit. Meghan insisted she didn't quit. She evolved. She grew beyond what they wanted her to be. Gutfeld shook his head in amazement. He said she abandoned her responsibilities and then spent the next 3 years trying to monetize her victim status. That wasn't evolution, he said. That was exploitation. Meghan was visibly shaking now, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She said she didn't have to listen to this. She didn't have to sit there and be attacked by someone who had never accomplished anything meaningful in his life. Gutfeld said simply that she should leave then. Nobody was keeping her there. Meghan shot back that maybe she would. Maybe she would walk right out and let everyone see exactly what kind of host he really was. Gutfeld replied with a shrug that she should be his guest. But before she left, he wanted to ask her something. Did she actually believe the things she was saying, or was this all just performance art? Meghan stared at him in shock, asking what kind of question that was. Gutfeld said it was a simple one. Did she really think she was some sort of misunderstood hero, or did she know deep down that she was just another celebrity who couldn't handle the pressure? The question seemed to break something fundamental in Meghan's composure. Her face twisted with fury as she leaned across his desk. She snarled that he was pathetic. A pathetic little man who got his kicks from tearing down people who were better than him. She had accomplished more in 5 years than he would accomplish in his entire lifetime. Gutfeld remained calm, which seemed to make her even angrier. He asked what exactly she had accomplished, and told her not to say raising awareness because that wasn't an accomplishment, that was just talking. Meghan said she had raised millions of dollars for charity. She had brought attention to important causes. She had inspired people around the world. Gutfeld asked what she had inspired them to do: abandon their families when things got tough, sue their relatives, turn personal drama into public spectacle. Meghan slammed her hand down on his desk, causing his coffee mug to jump. She said that was enough. She would not stand there and be insulted by someone who contributed nothing but negativity to the world. Gutfeld said evenly that she didn't have to stand there. The door was right behind her. Meghan said he was right. She was leaving, but not because he was kicking her out. She was leaving because she had better things to do than waste her time with someone so small-minded and bitter. She turned toward the exit, but Gutfeld wasn't finished. He said that before she left, he wanted to make something clear to everyone watching. Meghan spun around, eyes blazing, and asked what? Gutfeld said she wasn't leaving because she had better things to do. She wasn't leaving because he was small-minded. She was leaving because she couldn't handle being challenged. She was so used to friendly interviews and easy questions that when someone asked her to defend her actions, she fell apart. Meghan insisted she wasn't falling apart, though her voice was cracking. Gutfeld asked if she was sure about that, because from where he was sitting, it looked like she had just spent the last 10 minutes having a complete meltdown because someone dared to question her story. Meghan said this wasn't a meltdown. This was her standing up to a bully. Gutfeld laughed and said he was sitting behind a desk asking questions. She was the one screaming and throwing around insults. Meghan looked around the studio as if seeing it clearly for the first time. The audience was staring at her with a mixture of shock and embarrassment. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of her breakdown. Her carefully crafted public image was crumbling in real time. She announced that the interview was over, trying to regain some dignity. Gutfeld said that actually, it was over the moment she walked in thinking she could lecture him on his own show. He added that security would show her out. Meghan's eyes went wide with disbelief. She asked if he was having her escorted out. Gutfeld confirmed that he was, explaining that unlike her, he actually respected his audience enough not to subject them to any more of this tantrum. 2 security guards appeared from the side of the stage, approaching Meghan with professional politeness but clear intention. Meghan muttered that this was unbelievable. This was exactly the kind of treatment that proved everything she had been saying. Gutfeld said firmly that this was what happened when someone came on his show and acted like an entitled child. Actions had consequences, something she apparently never learned. As security escorted her toward the exit, Meghan turned back one final time. She told Greg that he would regret this. When people saw how he treated her tonight, they would see who he really was. Gutfeld smiled as he sat back down at his desk. He said he was counting on it. He told the audience they would be right back after a commercial break with someone who actually knew how to have a conversation. The camera stopped rolling as Meghan disappeared through the studio doors, her heels clicking furiously against the floor. The audience sat in stunned silence for a moment before erupting into scattered applause. Gutfeld straightened his papers and looked directly into the camera as it came back to life. He told viewers that the interview had certainly been educational. Sometimes the most revealing interviews were the ones where people revealed more than they intended. The dramatic confrontation had shown a side of the guest that was rarely seen in carefully controlled media appearances, and it left everyone wondering what would happen next.